Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be featuring the Hindenburg, a ship I've played a ton and I've always enjoyed. And I'm going to be playing it using Günther Lütjens, the new German special commander that has finally made it to the live servers. Also, thank you guys for the amazing support. I've seen a ton of you dropping subscriptions on YouTube and follows on Twitch, and I just wanted to give you a shout out. I really appreciate the support. It's what keeps me doing what I'm doing, and I love you guys a lot for doing that. Moving on, Günther Lütjens. They have given it the price of 175,000 coal, and that is such an insane price. Because ultimately that's the same price as Kuznetsov has. And Kuznetsov, which is the Soviet special captain, has a unique perk which is called Will to Victory. And what this does is when you drop below 10% health, you get a dispersion debuff on anyone shooting you. Basically they have a significantly poorer aim. I think it's like 20% dispersion debuff on anyone shooting at you. You damage all fires and flooding, and you gain a significant heal. It's basically a get out of jail free card. It's when you're just about to be burned down in your battleship or in your Stalingrad, in your Moskva, whatever. You're just about to be killed, and then that special captain procs, and suddenly it turns out you're actually going to be surviving significantly longer, especially since it might allow you to get another damage con off, another heal off, and even extend it further. It is a proc that will almost always activate. It has a really high chance of activating, because really the only thing you need to do to activate it is just take damage. That's it. And obviously Wargaming knows it's super effective and super strong. That's why they made that captain cost 175,000 coal. Moving on, then we have Günther Lütjens. Now, I've spoken a bit about this captain in the past, but now that it's on live and we know the cost, we can go over some of it again. The carrier specific thing is obviously just for Graf Zeppelin. They fixed the bug with that proccing on other ships. I think if you get 30 strikes or 30 hit ribbons in with your carrier, you get like 10% faster aircraft reinforcement. That's fine and dandy. Ultimately though, the captain is basically useless on battleships. If you get 100 secondary hits in your battleship, you will proc the captain's special perk, which boosts your secondary reload by 15%. Trust me, this is really not that good. First of all, a 15% secondary buff is basically nothing. It's very insignificant. It's like picking VFT and a bit of AR on top. And you only proc it... First of all, getting secondary hits is usually very situational. And you need 100 secondary hits just to make the captain even work. So it's an incredibly situational skill, and it's gonna proc extremely rarely, and even when it procs, you're gonna be hard pressed to even notice the difference. You literally will be hard pressed to even notice that, oh yeah, the special captain proc. It is so insignificant of a difference. So for battleships, the Günther Lütjens is basically pointless. If you like playing your Große Kurfürst or whatever, you like playing your Friedrich Große, Bismarck, Tirpitz, Scharnhorst, all of these ships, maybe Scharnhorst can proc the cruiser perk, but in general, it's simply absolutely not worth 175,000 coal. Then we have the more important perk, which is Iron Will. And this procs if you land 140 main battery hits. Now, there might be some games where you might struggle to get this, but in general, in the Hindenburg, I've been able to somewhat consistently land or activate this perk. It usually takes some time to get it working, but when you do get it working, it is a 7.5% reload buff. Now, 7.5% isn't really going to be exactly earth-shattering, to be honest. I mean, when my reload here is about 10 seconds, 7.5 isn't even a second off the reload. So not that magical, but it is a DPM buff. And considering the Hindenburg is basically most of the time a mid to long range spammer, it does greatly benefit from just being able to spam more effectively. It's got that improved HE pen, that 50mm HE pen, and you generally want to be playing like this kind of way and just spamming your targets. Later on, of course, you want to brawl, but early game brawling needs to be avoided because the Hindenburg doesn't really have the speed or the survivability to actually YOLO in and brawl other ships. So it takes some time to activate it, but the perk does activate fairly naturally. Not exactly worth 175,000 coal though, that's 7.5% reload. It's a very, very steep price, considering you can instead get Kuznetsov and give your battleships or heavy cruisers another life. It does have a third activation, and that is for DDs. And that is, I've gone over this before, but I haven't mentioned it again. You need 3 spotting ribbons, and you get a heal that scales off your tier. And at tier 10, the heal heals you for 3000 health. Now, as I mentioned before, that perk is completely backwards, because it only activates if you... it only activates based on spotted ribbons. And the way you get spotted ribbons in World of Warships is you spot a ship that has been undetected for 90 seconds, or at the start of the game. So, if you push in your DD and you spot 3 ships, well, you're gonna get that activation, and it activates automatically. And then you get a 3000 heal, but you're already full HP, so it's completely wasted. Now, in order to activate this perk again, well, you need to stop spotting the ships and leave them unspotted for 90 seconds and then go back and spot them again to activate it. It's almost impossible to control, and if there's a carrier, like in this game, like in most games these days, well, the carrier is gonna get all the spotting ribbons, and you're not gonna get any of them. So you're gonna be almost impossible to proc that perk. I said to Wargaming, well, can't you make this based on spotting damage instead? That way, instead of encouraging DDs to go in and spot and then run away and stop spotting and then go back in and spot again, like this completely backward gameplay, why not encourage DDs to keep the enemy spotted, and then based on the spotting damage that you get, you gain healing. I thought that would be a really good mechanic, and it would encourage a good play, and it would reward the DD for the good play. Like, it would be a really useful perk. But Wargaming decided to go with their current version, and honestly, it's trash. It's just straight up trash. There's literally... You have no control over what you're spotting or not. You can't tell if the ship you're about to spot has been unspotted for 90 seconds or not. It encourages you to stop spotting if you want the healing, because if you keep spotting, well, then you're not going to be gaining any of that healing. It's just completely backwards. You have no control, and it encourages bad play. I hate the perk, and if you're a DD captain and you're hoping to get the heal, not worth it. Complete trash. On the other hand, I've been playing the Z52 a fair bit, and I have managed to make the Iron Will, aka the 140 hit ribbons, work fairly well when I've been building for full gunboat Z52. So if you like playing full gunboat Z52, Günther Lütjens actually works pretty okay. Once again, it's only though a 7.5% reload. It's not gonna make the Z52 a great ship. In fact, when I had AR and I had the 3 million reload mod and I had Günther Lütjens Iron Will proc, I got my reload down to 2.7 seconds on the Z52. The Daring has a reload of 2 seconds. So, yeah, you don't exactly become a DPM monster even with it, but it does make the Z52 slightly more enjoyable. Overall, as for the heal on the DD, I played the Z52 I think maybe 7 games, and the heal managed to be useful once, by accident. I didn't actually mean to proc it, accidentally I spotted a ship in the back, and then I proc the heal, and it actually gave me 3k healing. Not exactly worth 175k coal. There we go, Iron Strike. Sorry, not Iron Will, it was called Iron Strike. My bad, the game just... Did the game just intentionally correct me? This game though, well, now you get to see some of that improved. This is of course Hindenburg with reload mod. I love running reload mod on the Hindenburg because one of the great benefits of the Hindenburg is that fast reload, and instead of the range, because I think 7.8 is plenty of range since you have spotter plane. So now you get to see AR plus reload mod plus Iron Will proccing at once. It does give the ship a nice DPM boost, no doubt. But you get to decide for yourself if you think it's worth 175k coal, when you can instead get some of the really powerful ships, or you can just get the Kuznetsov captain, which is a significant upgrade for any tanky Soviet ships that you place it on. This is of course stuff I went over in my blind fire guide. It's a Cyclone, so what do we do in a Cyclone? Well, the Yoshino is running away, and we're down 170 to 747 points. We're down 6 ships against, what, 7? We are basically really in huge trouble. So I'm blind firing. I'm using the minimap, lining up the shots. I posted a blind fire guide. It probably got pretty blind fire guide probably got pretty overlooked because it was just as the Puerto Rico drama was kind of exploding. So I think a lot of you guys might have missed my blind fire guide. But it's basically going over things like this, utilizing these cyclones to practice shooting minimap targets. It's very effective and very useful. Playing safe in the cap allows me to get us a cap, so we're finally gaining some points, so we don't risk basically being zeroed, which would have been a huge issue. And the blind fire allows me to reset the cap to the extent that Moskva will not be able to get it, and of course putting some pressure on him as well. We're still down significantly on points, but now I actually see that there is a chance that I might, or we might be able to turn this into a victory. The Yoshino is obviously disengaging. I'm gonna assume he's bailed. I'm not gonna start chasing a Yoshino. It's a Cyclone. The Yoshino is miles away. He is completely irrelevant to the outcome of the game right now. Where I'm needed is supporting my team. There is big fighting breaking out in the middle of B. B is basically where all the key action is going. We killed the Moskva, but our Smolensk dies in return, so questionable trade. So I will sail towards the Yoshino. In case he gets the idea of turning back in, I can cut him off and I can support my Zal. But ultimately my goal, in a Cyclone, you want to stick with your team. Mostly, especially in a Hindenburg. In this later game, in a Cyclone situation, the Hindenburg is actually very powerful because you have so many torpedoes. And at close range, you are a very hard ship, the Citadel. So if you get the opportunity to push in and torpedo ships and just brawl, obviously you want to take it. Cyclones kind of favor the Hindenburg in general. No, your AP doesn't have any improved angles. You probably saw some nasty bounces, for example, on that angled Yoshino. I shot him with AP, I got like 5 bounces and 1 pen. It doesn't have any improved angles, and it doesn't have any amazing AP pen, but it's got a lot of AP DPM, and it's got improved HE penetration, and especially with Günther Lütjens, it's got a fair bit of DPM. So right now, I'm just going to try to help out my team as much as possible. The biggest threat I'm seeing right now is there's actually a Minotaur and potentially a Grozovoi chasing my carrier. And if we lose our carrier, when we're 230 to 800 points down, we're going to lose this game hard. My team takes out the sail in my attempted to blind fire. So now my priority is obvious. I need to go save my carrier. I need to make sure my carrier doesn't die. Minotaur kills my Shimakaze. We're down 4 versus 5. We're still in huge trouble. But I'm hoping that I might be able to cut off this Grozovoi and this Minotaur chasing my carrier. This is a common tunnel vision issue people have. They try to hunt down an enemy carrier or some enemy key ship without paying attention to their own positioning. You often see it from your teammates. You see battleships sailing into the enemy spawn to chase a Yoshino, chase a Buki, chase a Zal, chase a Henry. These are the common culprits, these kiting HE spammers, and your team is convinced that we need to kill this guy, so they completely miss position and they overextend and they try to go hunt him down, and obviously you benefit. Lining up on the minimap, blind fire. Not quite enough lead, or maybe trying to line up again. Once again, Cyclones are excellent practice for blind fire. Use it. 6 hits out of 12 with blind fire. No citadels now. This time I'm holding my fire because I know I'm just about to spot him. And of course, Hinden, even though it might not have these other advantages, has really high AP alpha. So if you do manage to line up the shots and you do manage to land some citadels, the damage is honestly quite filthy. I pop Hydra, of course, because there's a risk he might have torped, but my citadels finish off the Minotaur without any issues. And we've turned it into a 4 versus 3, actually, I spoke too soon. 3 versus 3 at this point. Well, I instantly switch to HE, expert loader of course, and I start pouring in HE on this Kremlin that I can't see. Note that, once again, blind fire using the minimap. Extremely effective. Gaining some few hits on him, but obviously I'm hoping to start some fires because I expect my carrier to go for him next. We're getting some good hits in, well, good and good, we're doing cheap damage, and that's most of what we want. We want to be harassing him, stopping him from getting into the cap, and of course The hit markers give us an idea of where in the smoke he is. I predict he moves forward, and that prediction turns out to be correct, and I score a fire on him. And that fire starts ticking, and he still hasn't damaged Condat. So that's probably gonna be some good damage. Meanwhile, Midway comes in for a strike, reinforce sector, and turn right. Apparently I've been told, I can't confirm it, but apparently someone in chat calls me a cheater because of all this blind fire. I'm not sure, I can't speak Russian, so I'm not sure. Someone in chat, maybe one of you guys in the comments can confirm if I was actually called a cheater. But that's very common when you blind fire a lot. It's in no way uncommon to be called a cheater, because people don't understand what you're doing, and that's why I made the blind fire guide, because you guys should know what I'm doing. It's good to learn, and it's a very, very useful skill. Cyclone fades, I switch to AP, and Midway is caught being overextending, trying to get that cap with 3 minutes remaining. Our only chance of winning is obviously getting the kills. The Yoshino is angled, and Yoshino honestly isn't nearly as big of a threat as a Midway is. So I'm just gonna start pouring in, and this is where you start seeing, especially as my HP goes down, this is where you really start seeing that combination of all these AP, all these perks, the reload mod, AR, and Günther Lütjens, that Iron Will. You start seeing all of these combined. I got a, what, 7.2 second reload at this point? Let's actually see when I shoot the next time. We got a 7.3, 7.4 second reload. So obviously that is pretty damn devastating. He angles enough that I can't citadel him. I'm shattering on his citadel. I mentioned before, once again, Hindenburg's AP pen isn't really that special, but Hindenburg's AP DPM is excellent. So I just aim for his upper belt instead, and I just finish him off with some high damage AP hits. Sweet expert loader to HE. Once the Midway is dead, there is a Yoshino left. Once again, we need him dead. Another reason to kill the Midway was, if I kill the Midway, all my carrier needs to do is finish off the Yoshino, something he should be able to do quite easily. I damage on a single fire, mostly because I just want to get enough health that I can survive the next volley, but ideally I think I need to kill him now. I also drop torps that in case I die, I'll be able to finish him off with a flesh wound, but ultimately there is no need for this, as my HE kind of doesn't care about this armor. Hindenburg HE penetration is 50 millimeters. The game ends. Dreadnought, high caliber, a lot of tanking, a lot of damage dealt. 248,000 damage. Only 11 planes shot down, but then again the carrier wasn't too focused on me. 18 cap defenses, a lot of those while blind firing. No surprise there. Cyclones are a great practice ground for any sort of spamming cruiser. 4 kills, 7 fires, 7 citadels. That's kind of how it's supposed to go in the Hindenburg. You shoot a lot of HE, you shoot a lot of AP. Team score wise, well, it's a pretty impressive number. 3.6k base is always good, especially when it's a full tier 10 game and there's a carrier involved. With carriers always makes cruiser life harder, because they kind of tend to spot you and ruin a lot of your positional play. So 3.6k, and considering how far down, we were something like 160 to 800 points, so managing to claw this game back and turn it into a win is obviously quite satisfying. Detailed report wise, well, potential damage, only 1 million. We didn't really tank that much. We ate 79,000 damage, a mix of HE and AP, a bit of rockets, torps, basically a bit of everything. Damage dealt though, HE 82,000, AP 120,000. We shot more HE of course, but AP, when you get to shoot broadsides, tends to be so much more effective, because that's kind of the gimmick of the Hindenburg or German cruisers in general, that high AP alpha. The 7 fires we got were highly effective, 45,000 from only 7 fires. I mean, obviously we targeted ships when they damage con, we continued shooting to make sure we got these permanent fires going. It can be significantly more in the Hindenburg, especially if there's no Cyclone interfering, because then you tend to HE spam much more. Still, this was a good example of Günther Lütjens being procced somewhat early, and then a lot of blind fire, which I mentioned in my guide, and just generally Hindenburg gameplay. I will leave you guys up to decide if you think spending 175,000 coal on a 7.5k, sorry, 7.5% reload boost is worth it. Personally, I would only recommend it if you have stockpiles and stockpiles of coal remaining, or if you absolutely have no interest in any of the coal ships like Thunderer or Smolensk or Georgia or any of these, and you have no interest in Kuznetsov either, which is a much better investment. If you have no interest in these and you absolutely love German ships, then sure, Günther Lütjens is an upgrade. Let's not pretend it's not an upgrade. 7.5% reload is always a 7.5% reload. It is a nice upgrade on DDs and on cruisers. And of course it's good on Graf Zeppelin. On battleships, the captain is pretty much useless. If you think it's worth it, sure, go for it. But I will absolutely not go out of my way to recommend it, because I think the power disparity between Günther Lütjens and Kuznetsov is night and day. Kuznetsov gives you another life, it's easy to proc, it's guaranteed, it's a huge game changer, it changes how games are played because you can play around having that captain, whereas Günther Lütjens is like, hey, I got a small buff. We've seen these kind of, like, it's not even as good as the perks you have on many other ships, like Halsey's Confederate perk or Sansonetti's Confederate perk. These ships get 15 or 20% reload boosts. This thing gets 7.5. Sure, it's easier to proc getting 140 hits than it is to get Confederate, but ultimately the effectiveness is pretty damn weak. Still, let me show you guys my recommended build for the Hindenburg while we are at it. Right, as usual, I will start with the modules. Obviously, you should be running Premium Damage Con, and you should be running Premium Hydro. It's German Hydro, which is significantly more effective than the others because of the increased range, and more importantly, Wargaming has gone out of their way to completely ruin defensive AA. It no longer splits up, spreads out the attacks, it's got colored tracers, so even the dumbest carrier can tell if you're using it. It's just generally very ineffective, and most of the effectiveness is focused on the flak, which obviously can be easily dodged by experienced carriers. So honestly, don't bother with defensive AA. It's kind of been ruined. Spotter plane, because we run reload mod to make up for our lack of range, and premium heal for obvious reasons. Upgrade wise, run the spotter plane module if you can afford it, because this gives your spotter plane a nice uptime of 130 seconds, which will allow you to not just proc Günther Lütjens pretty early in a match, but also give you that range that you need. If you don't have one of these, just run turret and torpedo tube survival. Hydro duration, if you don't have it, then I would recommend just damage control. I think you don't really lose engine or rudder in the Hindenburg. Flak, even if we're not building for flak, adding some flak to your defense, it's a really good upgrade. It gives you a 9 flak instead of 7, which can be effective if a carrier decides to strike you. Improved rudder shift for obvious reasons. The turning circle is pretty okay at 800. It's not the best, but the rudder shift is pretty poor, so you pretty much need it. Concealment and faster reload, because we really want to build for that Dakka. Captain build wise, priority target, adrenaline rush, superintendent, concealment expert, basic cruiser build. After this, I've actually built a demolition expert for fire chance. I don't build IFHE. I've experimented with it just to be able to farm the likes of Kremlin and Musashi and Izumo and Yamato. Like it does have its benefits, but ultimately it's too much of a cost, the 3% fire chance, and considering they will be getting rid of it at some point, but still, I still like the 17% fire chance, because especially with Günther Lütjens' additional DPM, you become quite a fire starter overall. Once you have these perks, expert loader for obvious reasons. I run the expert marksman mostly because Günther Lütjens has improved expert marksman, and it does cut the turret traverse down to 22.6. Default turret traverse with this build is 25.9, which is honestly more than enough to justify not building expert marksman at all. In fact, you could probably just build high alert instead. That would be perfectly fine. And jack of all trades and improved preventive maintenance from Günther Lütjens, especially since we're building spotter plane and not turret and torpedo to survival. Reducing the chance of those breaking is quite nice. As mentioned, here's are the talents of Günther. Air superiority, pretty good for carriers. Aircraft restoration, 10%. The secondary perk, the only one that you will be proccing on a battleship. Honestly, not really that useful. 15% is meh, and having to earn 100 secondary hits just to proc it is very questionable. The Iron Strike. Wait, it was called Iron Strike here, but it was called Iron Will when it procced Was it called Iron Strike? Okay, I'm remembering everything. But 140 main battery hits. This one achievable on cruisers, fast reloading cruisers. I don't think Hipper and Eugen is going to have any chance, but Rune and Hindenburg, maybe Nuremberg and the like, might be able to proc this. 140 main battery hits. 7.5% reload boost. And this is the one that I hate. Exemplary reconnaissance. Upon earning 3 spotted ribbons, your ship's HP gets restored. No control of when it activates, no control of how to activate it. This is completely RNG, out of your control, and most of the time it's absolutely useless. So the DDs get shafted hard, which is kind of sad because of the entire German line, I think DDs are the one that need the most help right now, and they are getting the least of it. Flag-wise, increased that fire chance for that to get that fire, and reduced fires, flooding, speed, faster consumable usage. Most important is, of course, the healing and the speed, because this thing is pretty damn slow. With the speed flag you get 33.1, but the Hindenburg is never really going to be any speed demon. It is a slow cruiser, and it takes some getting used to. As always, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel. I really appreciate you guys dropping a sub. This channel has been growing pretty fast lately, and I think it's absolutely awesome. So a big thank you to you guys. We hit 80k subs recently and 90k followers on Twitch. So some big milestones being crossed. You guys rock. And I will talk to you guys later.